Ave cohort, we are here. It is Saturday, which means it is time for Pilum Teaches DCS. Today we're going to be looking at a different aircraft as our phases and work on the F-4E Phantom II is for the moment complete. And we're going to be working with the F-16C Fighting Falcon, colloquially known as the Viper. This particular aircraft, we've got a lot of things that we're going to be doing with it. But for today, our primary focus is going to be on our introduction, walk around startup, getting the Jehikmas ready for combat, operating the data link, talking about some helpful keybinds, doing some basic navigation, introduction to the new range that I've built for this aircraft, and the air refueling to make that work. Let's go ahead and get into it, and we're going to talk a little bit about the introduction history and overview of the aircraft. And then we'll get into our cockpit walk-around functions and get going with startup. So first and foremost, the F-16 is the current aircraft that is part of the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds air demonstration team. It is flown around the world in various variants. It is a 20,000-pound class fighter as designed by Harry Hilliker, borrowing from the energy maneuverability concepts of John Boyd. Its original outset was to be a daytime fighter that was meant to get in and dogfight. It's extremely agile for its type, uses fly-by-wire flight control systems, and anecdotally, things like the control stick in initial variants was a source of complaint as it did not provide enough give to the pilot to make them feel as if they are actually flying the plane. It relied on pressure to determine how it's going to manipulate the flight controls to fly the jet. It possesses a bubble canopy that has as few frames as possible to permit optimum visibility all around the aircraft. The seat is reclined slightly to allow the pilot to endure G-forces, and has eventually developed into being one of the premier seed platforms of its type as a Gen 4 Plus machine. It's a role that's largely being superseded by more modern aircraft, but this one still manages to hold its own and flies admirably in service today. Let's go ahead and get into the machine itself. And we'll start doing our cockpit walk around. This is phase 1. We're going to move through other phases as well. Phase 2 is going to be primarily focused on all things iron. Phase 3 will be guided weapons. Phase 4 is air-to-air combat. Phase 5 we start talking low-level tactics. 6 will do nighttime work, including ILS approaches and such. 7 will be the need for seed. 8 will be our strike package. 9 will be air-to-air missions, where we take the lessons from air-to-air and bring them forward to an actual mission set. And then phase 10 finally will be putting it all together. Morning, Jolly. Alright, so before we unpause and get going, we're just going to do our quick cockpit walk around. Starting from the aft left side, we have the digital flight control system, where we don't really need to manipulate any of these controls. However, we do have options for the leading edge flaps to be in auto mode or locked, a flight control system reset, our manual terrain following fly up, enable or disable switch, an alternate flaps extend switch, a digital backup switch. We've also got our manual trim settings that are back here. Forward of that, we have the fuel control panel that controls tank inerting, fuel engine feed, and air refueling door controls. We also have a fuel master switch cover. Below that, we have the IFF console that determines our IFF transponder code for modes 1, 3, and 4. The master modes, and all of the other different monitor and reply modes there that are available on those switches. Below that, we have the exterior lighting, anti-collision lights, and blink codes for 1 through 4, and then Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, where it will blink the anti-collision light in the Morse code for those different settings. Forward of that, we have the cockpit video camera recording system, the AVTR. We also have our primary battery and throttle engine control settings all along this outboard edge. Forward of the AVTR, we have the electronic countermeasures that controls our ECM pod settings and its different barrage or standby operating modes. Forward of that on the left side, we have the various volume control knobs for everything from the intercom, TACAN, and ILS all the way up to our different radio types. Forward of that, we also have our manual radio control button. You can also see in the forward section outboard, we have the engine starter, a JFS starter switch. On the left knee panel, we have the threat warning RWR power settings, our cockpit lock bar, our JHICMAS helmet mounted combat display, brightness knobs, additional countermeasures and missile warning system settings and information, our landing gear and landing lights, parking brake, stores configuration switches. Right now we're in category 3 owing to the fact that we got a bunch of weight on our wings. On the forward console, we have our autopilot control settings here on the bottom portion. Master armament panel, laser arm panel, our radio frequency normal, quiet and silent mode, and ECM active designation switch, or designation light to let us know that it's actually doing its thing. Above we have our different warnings for the RWR system, including the RWR display and brightness control knob itself, and all of the various buttons that we're familiar with the F4, including our handoff mode, launch warning, system test, unknown threat, whole thing. On our center console, we have our ICP, which we use for a variety of different functions. We have some master modes across the top for COM 1 and 2 for our UHF and VHF radio. IFF information for the override switch. Our list functions that allow us to work with the DED. Air-to-air, air-to-ground master modes. Symbology, brightness settings, bunch of buttons. Our rocker switch, our dauber switch, and our warning reset, and some of our basic FLIR controls here on the right. Center console, we have our manual steam gauges, what few of them we do have, including an altimeter, airspeed indicator, AOA indicator, our ADI globe, and a vertical speed indicator, feet per minute. Below this, we have our multifunction horizontal position, TACAN, and other function reader box, which will be on when the jet has power, and our fuel quantity selectors, as well as our transfer switch. Backup ADI ball, fuel flow gauge are here on the right. The DED is in the top right-hand corner of this console. Additional warning and caution lights are across the bars here on either side. AOA indexer, of course, on the left-hand side. Its brightness control knob there. And on the right-hand side, we have our air refueling switch, nose wheel steering switch, and other indicator lights here on the right. Continuing down the right-hand side, we have the remainder of some of our other steam gauge type objects, including our nozzle position, our engine RPM gauge, fuel flow rate, fuel gauge, backup compass, additional warning and caution lights, hydraulic pressure lights, our stick. We have our clock, EPU fuel, which is for emergency uses. It's like a hydrazine canister that will keep the flight control systems working while you are gliding for a limited period of time. Moving down the right-hand side, forward to aft, we have the power sensor switches for our left and right cheek stations, our fire control radar, and the radar altimeter. Further aft, we have our various HUD declutter lights and display information. Generally, I kind of leave these in their own default configuration, but if you need to remove some of those things, you can use those switch to toggle those on and off. Carrying further aft, we have the interior lighting control panel, which controls consoles, instrument panels, the data entry display, which is the DED that we talked about earlier, flood lamps, and other brightness and dimming settings to just kind of rapidly configure the cockpit a little more closely with the flip of a switch for day and night work. Air conditioning is after that, generally just stays in auto normal. Further aft, we have the onboard oxygen generation system, which we can use to control oxygen flow to the pilot, as well as our KY58 control panel there that's going to be for encrypted messaging. Good morning, Chief. Carrying further aft, we have the anti-ice settings, which are across the top, as well as our antenna selection settings, which should generally be in normal unless you've received damage to one of the upper or lower receivers. We have our avionics power switches, as well as our alignment knobs for the INS, and the system for MIDS, which is tied to the data link system. And last but not least, in the very back, we have the data cartridge. All right, let's go ahead and unpause, and we're going to go ahead and get started with starting the jet itself. F-16 starts very quickly. We do this first by turning on our main battery power to main power and activating the jet fuel starter. We're going to hear that crank up. We do have some ambient friends and some folks here in the Turkish Air Force that are starting their jets up. We're going to wait for the RPM gauge to read just over 20% before we go ahead and take the throttle out of detent and ignite the engine. We want to wait until that point because if you ignite it too early, it will not start. All right. I'm going to bring the cockpit down. That's caught and latched and sealed up. I'll be doing startup a little bit slower than I generally do it, and we'll see in future videos, just so we can talk about all of the other systems there. We have main engine start. A lot of everything else is off, so let's go ahead and turn on our cheek stations. Turn on the radar and get that warmed up, and the radar altimeter. We're also going to come back to the avionics power panel and turn on all of these switches here. Turn on mids. I'm going to grab our symbology. And we can see AI versions of Trigger and iHort taxiing their way out.
Magic 1-1 on station at bullseye 020 for 140 at 25,000.
Symbology will come up. That will display our head-up display. Just the brightness as needed. And I think that's Cyclops there. Yeah, 214. That's Cyclops AI version bringing up the rear. Going to bring the standby ADI out of its lock. Arm our ejector seat, which will take out our caution light that we had up. This knob here on the left controls our helmet mounted display. I'm going to bring that up to about 50%, and that will turn on our helmet. While we're here on the ground, we're going to take our IFF system and bring it to normal. Put in whatever code you want. I usually use 1776. As a flight lead, I'm going to go and leave this in 1. Let's turn those up just a little bit to be bright. The lights are on. Exterior lights are on by default. We can see those flashing and flickering now. We'll turn on the RWR system. And it's going through its startup. Having done all those things, we're going to go ahead and use stored heading alignment. So we're going to take this knob here, bring it to stored heading. And we can see on the DED that it is now counting down. When the word align flashes in the HUD, the jet is aligned and ready to go. While this is counting down, generally I will go into list, and we're going to hit enter, which is E here, for data link. And we can determine its system right now. Right now it's in fine sync, so it's going to be giving us the most accurate position information from the satellites that are there. We're going to go ahead and hit our dauber switch here to sequence, which brings us to the tactical data link page. We want all three of these in one, FC, MC, SC. That's fine. Where it says FN25 here, that you can set yourself. Generally I use code FN for Fenrir Flight, and as 205 I usually use 25 as my number there. This is your voice identifier on the data link. FL is flight lead. I am the flight lead, so that is a yes. And XMIT is the transmit strength, which is set to high by default. We're going to go ahead and dauber over to sequence again one more time, which brings us to probably the most important page on our tactical data link setup, because this is actually how you build your network. You can see the alignment's complete, so we're going to go ahead and take the alignment switch and move it to normal, or nav rather. Normal is for normal alignment, where you don't have stored heading information for whatever reason. Back to the data link here. All of these numbers, 20205, the first one is your own aircraft. All of the numbers underneath, 20152, 20265, 20214, these are identifiers that I have assigned to other members of the flight. So if you encode these numbers for your own aircraft, for example, if I was sitting in Ihort's aircraft, my first row here would be 20152. The next one might be 20205, and then 265, 214, all and so on all the way through. What this does is it creates a data link network, and on your various displays, like right now we have the HSD that's up, you can see all of the friendly aircraft that are being moved around because we have an AWACS that is telling us that information. Flight members appear in blue. As an added bonus, if you're on the tactical data link network together, you can share information with other aircraft in your flight, so I can see what a wingman is locking onto a target with. I can see what ground target they're seeking to engage, because it'll show me a dotted line between their machine and what they're tracking. This T symbol here is important, especially when we're using the harm targeting sensor, as it's going to be transmitting information relevant to that automatically to other flights on the network. That's how we can get down to a PGM-1 level precision if we have 3 F-16s up together and operating in proximity to one another. Go ahead and take our altimeter out of pneumatic mode and put it in electronic mode. And at this point, we're ready to taxi. It doesn't take very long to get this aircraft started up and in a position to go. If you are knowledgeable about what you're doing and confident in your button dance and are not easily distracted, it's possible to get this aircraft from cold and dark to taxi ready inside of 2 minutes. Now that we are started up, I'm going to go ahead and take a walk around the aircraft. We'll talk about the weapons that we're carrying today. We will use some of them by the end, but that is primarily, a chore for later phases as we talk about those sensors and systems in detail. Morning, SpongeBob EM1. All right, so from left to right, we have a pair of AIM-120C AMRAAMs, CB-105 wind-corrected sensor-fused munitions, an AGM-88C HARM, the HARM targeting sensor, a fuel tank, the sniper pod, which is a target designation pod, and we mirror the loadout on the other side, except we have an AIM-9X Sidewinder on the right wing and an AIM-120 there on the outer pylon. We're almost done and can take off and start moving around. But we're going to go back into list. We're going to go under miscellaneous. We're going to go under the helmet mounted queuing system, HMCS, which is R or recall. And on the HMCS, you can choose what gets blanked out and what gets decluttered. So right now it has HUD blank, so if I am looking forward, the helmet is not displaying information. It blanks itself out so that I can rely upon the HUD. It also has cockpit blank, so as I look down through the aircraft, it doesn't show me that information, which can be, visually confusing and cluttered. We're going to go ahead and dauber right. So we are on the alignment status. And hit 0. Course alignment.
Springfield 1, passing waypoint 1 at 4,000.
Depending upon your field of view, you might have little visual issues there where it might blank some of those lines out. The goal here is to just align the two crosses together. And hit 0 again. And this is going to help keep the HUD aligned with where you need to look. It can be very critical for when you're looking at using the helmet as a sensor source or as a sensor of interest, a SOI. So I could look out the window and go, yeah, that thing out there right under the cross, I want to bomb that. I'm going to designate that as my sensor or my target point. And go from there. Alright, let's go ahead and turn on our missile warning system, RWR, all of these switches here, and we're going to set up our countermeasures panel. By default, I do like using manual program 2. It dispenses 10 each in a pretty steady pattern. That has done me alright so far. There's probably better patterns out there. I know iHort tends to go in and customize his, which gets wiped out with every update, as that is a file that gets overwritten whenever DCS does have an update. So you guys can do what you need to do there, yeah. Yeah, pairs are good. We have our coffee this morning there, Chief. Tiniest splash of cream, no sugar, and a little bit of blueberry flavor. Turn our nose wheel steering light on, which we have that indicator to say that it's on now. And we're just going to go ahead and taxi on out. Morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody coming into the chat.
Springfield 1, passing waypoint 2.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can actually use the data cartridge system to configure your various countermeasure patterns. Maybe it won't get wiped out with the next update.
Magic 11, pop-up group 0D2 for 170 at 3,500 knots.
Our little RMDR in place there, fuel truck, bomb handlers, Jolly's favorite panel truck on the planet. Go ahead and take the active here. Okay, let's scroll up, see SpongeBob asked a question there. Were they cluster bombs? The ones that I'm using or carrying at least today, yeah, they're CB-105 sensor fused weapons, which are cluster munition dispensers. Pull afterburner, take off the brakes. We'll be very quick on turning nose wheel steering off here as we get to 100 knots. You don't want that on. You don't want to do a barrel roll down the runway. You'll have good rudder authority as you get up to about 100 knots. And we're up. Bring our throttle back down a little bit. We're going to leave about 10 degrees up on the ladder. I'm going to do an attitude hold. So that was altitude hold. Let's go ahead and go back up to 10 degrees. And we're going to start heading towards waypoint 1. Let the jet fly itself for a minute while I talk. Go ahead and use the master light system here. Go and turn that off. That way we're not making ourselves a broader target here by having all of our navigation lights on. And we're going to talk a little bit about basic navigation. If you have waypoints on board in the jet, they appear as little diamonds. So you can actually look around the HUD here a little bit, and as I move my helmet away from the center, you can see a diamond with an X in it in the general direction of where that waypoint's located. So you can always relatively quickly find where it's at, and that is even reflected on the HUD. To build out a new waypoint, we're going to use our ICP, hit 4 for steer point, and select a waypoint, whatever one you like. I'm actually going to let the aircraft steady up on its course heading there and then put it into a heading hold before we start messing with that, because if I were to change the steer point to something different now, even to encode a new one, the jet would attempt to fly to a different place, since I'm in an autopilot right now. That's good, Jolly. It's good news to hear. Look forward to seeing you back up and causing trouble on purpose. Alright, so let's go ahead and set ourselves up for a heading hold. Now that we've got power, we've got our little horizontal display down here, we've got our distance to the waypoint in nautical miles here in the top left. We're going to take our heading bug and just line it up on our current course. Right there should be fine. And we're going to change over to a heading select, which will keep us where we need to go. We are starting to lose a little bit of knots. I'm going to turn the altitude hold on for now while we continue here. This horizontal display has different modes. You can toggle those by pressing the M button. You even got like little indicators on our ADI ball. TACN is TCN. PLILS, TACN is for landing. That's your ILS navigation mode for, you know, landing at night or in the dark. I'm just going to leave it on nav for now. The right-hand knob here, if you press and hold it, you can control brightness. So if it is too bright or washed out, you can dial that down a little bit. Building out a waypoint. You can select any blank number by pressing our rocker switch until you see when it's in zeros. Let's go with steer point 3. Cruising out here. And we're just going to create a new waypoint for Gaziantep. We're not going to land there today, we're just doing it for the navigation. I press and hold left alt and left click, which gives me the coordinate system there, a very nice quality of life feature for DCS. and we're going to add this waypoint in. We're going to go ahead and dauber down a couple of times. We get to our latitude, and we use lat long decimal minutes. This 3-digit precision here is what we're looking for. And you can see on the ICP we have different settings for north, south, west, and east. So we're going to start with north, and it's going to be 3657073. Enter. Dauber down to the east. Put our easting in. It's always 3 digits, so if it doesn't have 3 digits, it needs to have leading zeros until it does. In this case, we only need 1, so 0, 3, 7, 2, 7, 8, 4, 2. Enter. And then we always want to put the altitude in feet. Especially if we're going to use that for a target waypoint, as that's going to angle the pod to look at it where it's supposed to go. Now if we look on our HSD and we expand it a little bit, we can see our third waypoint is out here, and we can fly to it. Steer point 3 is selected, and I'm just going to flip this over to steering hold. We're going to mosey on over here to the right. And we can see we're lining up there with our waypoint. You can do dead reckoning as the heading tape here on the HUD will show your compass heading. And as a worst case fallback, you can use the standby compass. However, just remember that aggressive maneuvering is going to cause that free-floating ball to catch in various places in the casing and not provide you the most accurate information for your navigation. We'll talk about other alignment modes in a future setup there for us, as far as using the in-flight alignment option for correcting any heading problems. Just for Chief, we're going to go ahead and zoom in on that thimble. We have 7,300 pounds left, so we're not quite through our centerline fuel tank, but we're very close. About 7,200 pounds is internal fuel. But so long as you don't fly the jet like a moron, and afterburn or middle power full everywhere you go, you can get a whole lot of range out of the system. So let's talk about TACAN. Obviously, we have a TACAN setting here, but it looks like it's blanked out. There's nothing on it. Well, that's because we're not actually listening to a TACAN beacon right now. And we're going to come up here and hit TILS for TACAN systems, which changes our DED to the TACAN display. With the box blank, you can hit the sequence knob to change from receive only to transmit receive. You can put a 0 in the box and hit enter to change from the X-ray band to the Yankee band, depending upon what TACAN beacon you're looking for. And then otherwise, it's just a matter of finding out which beacon we're looking for. In this case, it's going to be 18 X-ray. We put 18 in the box, we make sure we're on the X-ray band, I hit enter, and it says beacon Tex. I have named the beacon that this Texaco is transmitting on as Texaco, so it displays the first 3 letters there for us. Now, since we're in TACAN mode, it shows me the course heading to where the beacon is located, distance in nautical miles, and we can even, change our steering bug around and everything else for trying to fly a straighter course to get to where we need to go and what course heading that might need to be to try and intercept it. It's all manual on that one, so use that at your own discretion, but that's your steering line there. So let's go ahead and set ourselves up for some air refueling. First thing we're going to need to do is make sure that we're dialed into the tanker's radio frequency, which in this case is 124. So I'm going to use my VHF radio. as that has a lower frequency compared to the UHF. And to make it easier for me to see, I'm going to go ahead and select my right MFD as a sensor of interest, which we'll talk about in a moment, but that switches DMS down until the box is around the frame. I'm going to bring that little cursor over to that green dot that's nearby us, as he's very close by, and I'm going to hit TMS, or Target Management System, up. And there's Mr. Tanker. I've not called into him yet, but we will shortly. A couple of things that I need to do first. The first one, probably less important, is I just need to turn my lights on. I'm just going to swing that switch around again. We also need to inert our tank, which only takes a moment, but the switch needs to be engaged. And I'm going to go ahead and just preemptively open the air refueling door so I don't have to do that later. Opening the air refueling door does do a couple of things to the aircraft right away. That's important for you to know. The first one is that it deadens the inputs a little bit more than being in Category 3 for your fly-by-wire system. It's a lot of funny words there for it to basically mean that it makes it less sensitive, so you have to put more effort into maneuvering the aircraft, and that is just designed to make it easier to try and air refuel. Let's go ahead and call him on our VHF radio. We do that by hitting right control backslash or whatever button you might have had that bound to, and announce our intention to refuel. The other thing that in opening the air refueling door does is it immediately disables your autopilot. So if you had the autopilot on for an altitude hold or whatever else you might be doing with it, actually going to speed up here a little bit so we can catch the tanker. It will turn that off and stop responding to autopilot requests. So keep that in mind when you do open that door. The reason why we inert the tank is so that it can be properly filled. That way we can get our full fuel load back. I'm just going to check the message history here. Okay, here we go. Proceed to pre-contact 17,000 at velocity 350. So he is traveling at 350 knots indicated airspeed at the altitude that he's told you that he's at. It's not always exact. Like, he might actually be at 17,500 feet or 16,500 feet, but it's going to be rounded to the nearest 1,000. The flow rate gauge here is really your friend. When I'm cruising from point A to point B, I'll try and keep that somewhere under 7,000 per hour, as it's in pounds per hour. And it depends on a lot of factors. If you're down at low altitude, that number is going to be much higher for a power setting. If you're up at higher altitude, it'll be lower for a given power setting. So if you're really looking to cruise from point A to point B and you've got really nothing in the way of threats to worry about between there, the best goal for fuel conservation is to climb up to about 25,000 feet and adjust your engine power to be down to about 5,000 to 6,000 pounds per hour. Somewhere around Mach 0.6 to 0.7, which is probably the only good use of 6.7 ever. Sorry, kids. The older crowd can steal your words too. And the SA-2 is looking at somebody. We're a little outside his threat ring. Throw the speed brake out here for a minute. Cross through his wing wake. And we'll just go ahead and set ourselves up to be in the observer position for a moment, as we'll talk about some techniques and proper procedure there for refueling. Who is the SI-2 looking at? It's got to be me. And if he gets annoying enough, we'll throw something at him and be done with it. You have some weapons on board. Okay. So tanking 101, we've covered this on boom tankers in the F4, and the technique is very similar for any aircraft that's going to be using the boom. If you're more inclined for probe and drogue refueling, the starter part of this technique is the same. The first step is to approach an echelon left with the tanker and reach what's known as the observer position. This is where if somebody's on the boom already refueling, you're going to wait until it's your turn. Aircraft to the left of the tanker are waiting to refuel. Aircraft to the right of the tanker have been completed in their refueling and are waiting for the rest of their flights to consolidate. Your job in the observer position is to basically try and fly formation with the tanker so that you get a good feel about where his speed is for the altitude that you're at, and let the fly-by-wire system stabilize itself to keep the aircraft where you want it to go and adjust the trim. When it is your turn and you're ready to go, you're just going to go ahead and tip in a little bit, slip in behind the aircraft, and call ready pre-contact. I definitely recommend having that bound to a button. You will call cleared contact, and at that point, his inputs will be somewhat deadened too. So he should make, gentler left and right hand turns if he's making those turns to allow you to try and catch up and go to where you need to go. We will pause here in just a moment, like now. Hop outside of the jet for a minute and come up here to talk about these lights. As discussed in previous videos, but talking about it here today, the tanker has two sets of lights here up front that are important to you to pilot. The left-hand set of lights is your vertical indicator and your corrective action that you need to take. In this case, I'm a little low. I need to come up. That's why the arrow is there on the U side of it. The goal is to keep that in the middle bar, which will be a green light. And if I was too high or too close to the tanker, I would have the down indicator on the other end of that. The right-hand side is the fore and aft indicator corrector. In this case, I'm too far aft and need to come forward. So my corrective action, the light is closer to the F on that side. Again, the goal is to try and keep it in the center. In the center position, I will be approximately there. Not where I'm at right now. Like I'm obviously a little low and behind, or meaning like right here on the end of the boom, to receive fuel. The refueling port in the F-16 is located on the spine in the middle of the aircraft. Doors open there. And that's our goal, is to basically fly in a box so that the flying boom and the boom operator sitting in this little gondola can steer that thing and plug us and get us the gas that we need. Given the tiny fuel tank on the F-16 and the fast flow rate of a rigid boom, we won't need to be on the tanker for very long to get a full set of gas. But that's basically it, is you're just looking to fly formation in a particular spot behind the tanker. So if you're having a hard time refueling, literally the easiest way you can start making that process work is to start flying formation with your other friends. So like in Cyclops' case, if you happen to be watching this here right now, as a member of Fenrir Flight, if you start cruising and keeping formation with people or even other AI objects. Just maintain a position, try and be gentle with it, just hold that spot. Learning that process by feel is going to make it easy for you to tank, because all tanking is formation flying with a minor precision element, where you need to be in a certain position to let the boom connect. Once you are connected, you do have a little bit of playroom. It is not something that you can just kind of cruise up and then just keep your hands idle. You're constantly going to be making very small adjustments to make sure that as the center of mass of the aircraft shifts with the fuel being added into it, that you are in the right position still, that you're not climbing or sinking or anything along those lines. You'll need to be adjusting your throttles, because there's no power setting in the world that is going to be exact to keep you at an exact speed. So you're constantly going to be making little adjustments so that you keep flying in good parameters with the aircraft in front of you. Let's go ahead and unpause here. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my controls. So here in the lower left-hand corner, you'll be able to see my stick position relative to the cross and my throttle position on the other side. My focus now is going to be on the light, so I apologize if I miss anything in chat in the next handful of minutes.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
At this point, I'm just trying to fly the visual cues, trying to keep the aircraft in relatively the same position. My eyes are fixed roughly on that stripe in between both lights, so I can see how those are moving. Managed to capture him in the turn. Gentle throttle movements there, trying to keep myself in the good position.
Transfer complete.
And we're done.
Disconnect.
Alright, so we auto disconnect. I would, if I was working with my flight, call clear back, which is an interrogative statement, usually to the next person in line, who's going to look behind my aircraft to make sure that as I fall back from the tanker, I'm not going to run into anybody else. The next part of the procedure is to reform right, which is to say to reform echelon right with the tanker, and wait for the rest of the flight to get their gas. And then we'll press off together. Same thing, just going to move into position. Basically like the observer side, just watching that other aircraft, just trying to maintain my position. We'll take the time to close the fuel tank and de-inert my tank. And since we're ready to go ahead and go do something else, I'm going to go ahead and turn the lights out. And we're going to come out here to the right. Climb a little bit and talk about the next things that we're going to be working on. Probably getting rid of that SAM site, to be honest. It's been looking at us for a minute. To answer your question there, Jolly, I find it easier to get on the tanker, probe and drogue. I find it less problematic to stay on the tanker with boom and receptacle. The probe and drogue, the basket actually falls out of the slipstream, or out of the turbulent air of the jet and into the slipstream. So you really shouldn't have any effects of turbulence at all. Got a little bit of wind up here, which is why our HUD is all way out of bonkers alignment, because the flight path indicator is like out here. The biggest difference between the two, and the reason why I find it easier to sit on the boom, is fuel flow rate. In probe and drogue refueling, that flexible hose is a limitation. There's only so much fuel that you can put through there at so much pressure. So it does transfer fuel quickly enough, but it's only at about a rate of like 4,500 pounds per minute. The flow rate of the boom and receptacle is about double as a rigid piece of equipment. It's one of the reasons why the Air Force actually opted for boom and receptacle fueling compared to the Navy, because the probe and drogue system is lighter, much more simplistic. It's also why a lot of Air Forces and things around the world use probe and drogue, is that it's very easy to do things like buddy refueling. You know, anything with a hose on it and a basket can transfer fuel to somebody else. Whereas a rigid boom really requires its own dedicated platform and service and everything else. But the boom and receptacle offers a faster flow rate, and we did that for our Strategic Air Command bombers. Alright, we should have people coming back. But yeah, the Air Force opted for boom instead of probe and drogue, as they had the capability for dedicated refueling aircraft, and refueling a bomber off of a hose and drogue refueling system at only 4,000 pounds per hour. A big Strategic Air Command B-47 or B-52 or anything else like that, or a B-58, trying to refuel would take forever, and the longer you have two massive aircraft like that in that close formation flying together, the riskier things get. So they opted for a faster refueling system, having the rigid boom and receptacle. So it's easier once you stay on the basket. As long as you're flying formation there, you'll be a lot quicker getting refueled and topped off. Really, the only aircraft that's an exception to that is the F-4, because of the last couple of fuel cells that are very slow to refuel. But you can get up to 10,000 pounds very quickly with the F-4, and then, you know, continue and fly your mission. You don't necessarily have to completely and fully top off. Alright, once I get rid of this SA-2 here and it stops making noises at me, we'll talk about our introduction to the range, because we are flying on a different map than I've done my previous training scenarios on. Usually I fly on the Nevada Testing and Training map. But for the F-16, we're going to be using Syria. Let's actually cruise on out here real quick to steer point 3. Oh, it got intercepted. The SA-15 looked at it and shot it down. I don't want the search radar. I want the 15 either. There we go. They did say we'd have some fun too, so we're doing that.
Altitude.
I don't think you're getting that one this time, SA-15. Missile's a little quicker. Okay, now that things are quieter. So our range is going to be comprised of 2 nations. We have Westrania, which represents us. And then we're battling the nation of Eastlandistan. We'll be doing a little bit of it. We've covered a lot of the introductions, cockpit walk around, things like that. But we should be able to do a little bit of fun work. Set up for steer point 1 again, because we've got some very angry friends that need dealt with. New zones will be added throughout here, but we do have some local townships which are very generously offered their services for training and teaching and everything else. But as we've seen, due to some of the things we got parked around here, we do have a more modern threat environment featuring the Pantsir or SA-22 SAM system, the SA-15 Mod 2 system, and of course some of the older systems that one would associate with, like SA-8, SA-9, that kind of thing. We will use those things for attacking different zones, different terrain features that we can use to hide to mask our approach, and even some air engagements, as we do have Eastlandistan with an airbase that's going to put up some Syrian MiGs to operate as our aggressors from time to time. As we go through all of the later phases there, week by week, focusing on one particular set of missions or elements. Should be a good time. Alright, so we're in the air-to-ground master mode right now. We're going to cruise out here towards steer point 2, which has some other armored targets for us to deal with. We have our CBU-105s ready to go. The nice thing with the F-16, different master modes. I've got everything set up right now. I'm in this particular air-to-ground mode. If I have to go air-to-air, I can. I can do my air-to-air thing, everything's fine, and if I press air-to-ground again, I'm right back where I was. Everything's all nice and set up the way it was previously, goes right back to it. I can even go into a dogfight mode. Shoot the sun or whatever other aircraft might be out here, and then as I leave dogfight mode, puts me right back where I was. Everything's selected exactly as it was before. All I have to do is select a new sensor of interest and we're ready to shoot. So there have been moments where I've been flying the F-16, participating in a mission, and I've had to enter dogfight mode, look up, shoot an aircraft passing nearby with one missile or another, complete the loop that I'm doing, leave dogfight mode, and then drop a pair of Mark 82s over the target that I was just doing a crazy airshow style loop over. Alright, let's go narrow here. Got some friends out there. Few thermal contacts. A couple of them offset from everybody else. That should be the dam that's out here. One of these offset groups might be a SAM system. Actually, we know it is because we can see it right there on the threat page. There's air defense systems that are known to us. Now, if they move, those rings aren't going to move with them. But it does give us an idea about what might be in the area. A little bit of cloud cover. Stay up a little bit. Looks like they've got some shorter range systems that are present there. We'll find ourselves a juicy enough target. Get in and throw some bombs at it. I would argue that as paid modules go, the F-16 is probably the premier seed platform with all of its different systems. That's a nice cluster of targets there. Let's go ahead and mark that. So we can come back to it, and we'll mark this one too. These outliers I'm a little more concerned about. Oh, that kind of looks like an OSA. That was what, steer point 28? Our Mr. Osa is not going to be able to do much about us at high altitude. I think we'll put our first 3 bombs on target from high altitude. The big thing with some of the different weapons that are available for it is, especially in unguided weapons like regular iron bombs or snake eyes, things like that, is to really pay attention to how you're flying, as last-minute aggressive maneuvering can cause problems with getting your weapons on target. Step out to the wider mode here. In this particular case, we're using GPS-guided wind-corrected munitions. Oh, right, we've got a CAS mission going on up here. There's going to be friendly forces moving into the zone within 10 minutes. So we need to hurry up and try and thin the herd here a little bit. We are in range for our CBU 105. But we'll send it. Where is our other friend? So most GPS weapons, that bar on the right-hand side is your indicator for where you're at in the range group, with the caret being your present position. They are a lot more forgiving when it comes to accuracy. We're going to extend. I don't want to spiral down on top of an SA-8. That's kind of dumb. We had a bomb in the zone. Oh, right. I also put an HQ-7 down there. Good morning. So we're going to scream out of the zone here a little bit. Try not to fly in too straight of a line. I wonder if he intercepted my bomb. Probably find that out on TAC view here later. A little heavy on one side. Only dropped the one bomb. It's our initial target group. And they don't appear to be dead. Let's go ahead and cruise out here away from this cloud cover so I can get a better image of them with the pod. Can designate them a little better and choose if we want to attack them from up low, up high, or down low. Either way, we need to hurry. Got some MiG-29s that are getting a little close too. In fact, scan a little lower. Anyway, buddy, you didn't just lose them, did you? Oh, no, they turned cold. That's the problem. Closure rate's only 270 knots. Back to air to ground. And we really got to get in there and start dealing with some of those things before our armor shows up. They can actually wreck the face of the SAM systems that are present if we can deal with the armor. Okay. Waiting on this to come down. Vehicle. Sent another one. I want to watch this one go into the zone here. Fire cans awake. Good pop. Randy cannon coated sprinkles on top of the target area. Oh, somebody did try to shoot at it. pop. Oh, those tanks are dead. Nicely done. Should have other armored units. They're gonna be a lot harder to spot from this distance. I want to say they're gonna be north edge of the zone. Or you? I think those are our friendlies moving in. Yeah, it's the lead Leo 2. They are engaging. In fact, they've killed some of the SAMs for us. Let's get in a little lower, see if we can do. Viz mode, I'm able to steer Mr. Pod around here. I think that might be an enemy vehicle. I think that's our friends there. Oh, they are ripping him up. Alright. Let's get in there. Pickle. We are in caution mode because now my wings are light enough we can go back to category 1. And Mr. HQ7 isn't dead yet. So we're gonna go defensive low here.
Altitude. Altitude. Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude.
Oh, Mr. BMP. You're gonna have a bad day, buddy. So their sensor-fused pucks are just gonna go rain hell all over him. She kinda had some iron bombs there with me, but we didn't, so we use what we got. Some gun platforms down there. Yeah, it looks like a gun battery. Let's go strafe it. Be quick about our business here.
Altitude. altitude. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude. Tap flare.
Whew. Good gun strafe. I think we got most of that zone. Yeah, for now though, let's go ahead and start heading back for home, as we're out of weapons. And the armor's going to have to be on its own. I got a couple of Leo 2s and some Martyrs and some Foxes, so we should be largely okay. I hope. We did thin out the T90 herd that was out there. So start heading back towards Insulik. Insulik's TACAN is 21 X-ray. Change our beacon over to that. Go into navigation master mode. And it's 109 miles to home. Dial ourselves in for that. We're up about 18,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and just do a altitude hold and heading selector cruise. Mr. Firecan seems to have some words he wants to share with us. Did largely knock out that battery though. It's the one that we gun strafed. There's one, that's a T62. T62 we have out here. There's one T62 left. That particular group. Do have some T55s that are tucked in the buildings. Those might pose a problem for folks. Now our friendlies are stopped. But they will eventually consolidate and start pushing back through again. That was the other fire can and gun battery that was shooting at us on their way down. These are the S-60s. I don't think these are KS-19s, but I could be mistaken. It's all gun food from the air. Oh no, Frost. Oh, here he is. That's SA-9. That's not the one that was tracking us, though. There's a 7 somewhere down in this midst. Little Timu Krotal. Worry less about that, though, as we are closing in on the end here. So we're going to go ahead and cruise on home, land, and we'll review in TAC view. Go over some final notes for Phase 1 of our Pilum Teaches series there for the F-16. And talk about what we'll be doing for Phase 2, which is going to be all things iron. So next week we're going to be covering CCIP, CCRP, and DTOS bombing modes using the helmet as the sensor. We used the sniper pod today for our fun time. But we'll be talking about it versus Lantern and using that with unguided weapons. We can really set things up for that kind of an attack. Using the various cluster bombs and the Mark 80 series means they're going to be, I don't want to say restarting a lot, but that's basically what we're looking at, is to restart or rearm. We've only got so much pylon space there for the jet. And we're going to be talking about the advantages that iron bombs have versus subjectively better bombs, like the GBUs or laser-guided munitions like the GBU-10 series. or the GPS-guided bombs like the 30 series. And we're going to be covering some air-to-ground radar modes. One of the things that we'll be doing next week for All Things Iron is hunting a convoy using the GMT system of the radar for the jet. How easy that is to scan for an area, find a ground-moving target, and move to engage it. Should make convoy hunting for folks, if you're flying those kinds of missions on different servers, much simpler. Phase 3, we're going to be using a lot of smart weapons, glide weapons like the JSOW, Mavericks, laser-guided weapons. We got 2,000 pounds on the jet, and just reduce power here a little bit. And reset our warning. Let's take stock of our situation here, see where we're at. 2,000 pounds, we should be fine. Only 68 miles away. Got 1,900 pounds on the jet. We're burning 6,400 per hour, but we're only 6 minutes away. This little portion of your HUD here, this is helpful. This is helpful in a lot of ways. Next thing is change my low altitude setting here by tapping A low, which is not allow, it's just A low, which changes my low altitude warning to 80 feet. We are 61 miles away from our target. This is telling me distance back to the waypoint that we're at. Take care, Frost. Thanks for watching. Glad I was able to help you hang out for a little bit. Now we're actually 7 minutes away from that. Let's go ahead and set up a waypoint for Incirlik so we can get some better information about when we'll get home. We're going to go steer point 4. And we'll just set this up real quick. 37059er. East 035 26350. Altitude of 226 feet. Bing bong. We're 6 minutes and 36 seconds away. Yeah, the lightning pod. The fake pod that shouldn't. Because in many ways that one is hyper capable, where the sniper has a lot of use but is a little more realistically modeled. For example, go ahead and put this back in air to ground mode. Select you as the sensor of interest. It's pointing kind of at our target area. By TMS up to designate that spot, then and only then does it use post-processing to go, let me get you a clear image of that place. As compared to the wide and narrow field of view modes, which will blur. Like, I need something interesting to look at. Other than Incirlik. Okay, yeah, this will work. So you have this town. It looks okay in the pod. As I zoom in, the image gets fuzzy. But if I take it to the next mode and then TMS up, it does some post-processing magic, and now it looks crisp and clear. But it doesn't stay that way as I move the pod around. So the older pod for the jet, the one that was released with, the Lightning pod, will keep that image unrealistically perfectly clear and crisp for you compared to the Sniper. The Sniper does seem to have some tighter zoom settings. You can get much further distance out of the thing, but a lot of folks are using the other pod still for a lot of their work. It also doesn't have anywhere near as long the startup alignment and bit testing time as the Sniper does. Okay. Talking a little bit about the ILS. In the F4 we had a manual rotator dial that we could set up for the ILS information. We have a digital DED input that we can use for Inserlic. Runway 23 is the active runway. So the one that we want to set is this 111.70. I'm just going to come down here to the frequency under the ILS TACAN page. 11170. And now I'm getting ILS beeps, which I'm going to turn down. We're going to get those and the TACAN, which is the call letters for Inserlic. And it's beeping out there for you. The course heading of the runway is approximately 230. We're going to put that in as well. And if I do the ILS TACAN, we're going to get steering needles as we get actual information, and we'll have an ILS cross that will form there on our HUD. Going to set up for landing. Turn our lights back on since we're fencing out here. Make sure our master arm is set to off. Landing nose wheel light is set to landing mode. Daytime like this, if we had a bunch of aircraft all coming down together, it would be more appropriate to do an overhead brake pattern. Or at the discretion of tower down there, just enter into a basic orbital pattern over the runway. But since we're in ILS mode, we'll go ahead and we'll use the ILS cross today. This will be helpful later, because we're basically landing as if it were instrument only. But it's daytime, so we'll have all of our visual references intact, which we may not have at night, or in bad weather. And yet we can still bring the aircraft back home. As we zoom in there, see Inserlic. Slow down a little bit, put the brake out. We are above the glide path as we're actually getting positive glide path information now. Go ahead and descend that way.
Altitude.
It's our first altitude warning call out, which is set to 4,000 feet. The vertical part of the bar indicates our horizontal position left and right. Lower bar indicates our vertical position relative to the glide path. We're under 300 knots. Let's go ahead and put the gear down. We'll change our HUD to put this large bar there. Our goal is to have, in a perfect scenario, the flight path marker, the cross, and the place we want our wheels to touch on the runway all lined up with one another in about the middle of that I-bar. Ascending to the glide path now. Zoom in just a little bit here. Slowly but surely ascending to our glide path. A little quick yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop things down so we can get on AOA. A little below guide path, we're going to correct that with a little bit of engine power. So we fly to meet it again rather than fly over the top of it. Just like with tanking, the engine throttle is moving little by little. Your goal, if you're on AOA and you're on glide slope, is to correct your rate of descent with engine power rather than with moving the wings or elevating your controls. Trying to touch down roughly center line. Got a little bit of turbulence because I've built that into the weather for the map. It is a little windy here. I want my mains to touch down roughly in that darkened patch where we see all the rubber having met pavement. Cruising right on in. And we're floating because we are light. And there's contact. Definitely landing without nose wheel steering on. Same rules kind of apply in reverse from takeoff. You know, you really don't want to turn nose wheel steering on until you're under 100 knots or the speedometer is dead. Which, you know, is why it's showing 0 right now, but we still have movement. Proper procedure for the F-16 requires that it has the brake pedals out for landing. And that is just to give you a higher RPM setting that if you need to abort for whatever reason, it is faster to pull the brakes in than it is to advance power from a stop, or from nearly a stop. Taxi off the active here. We're not quite done yet though. We're going to go ahead and park the aircraft, put it in the hangar, shut it down, and then we will flip over to TAC view and review our flight. I'm going to talk a little bit about how useful of a tool TAC view is, as it is a free tool that you can utilize for kind of assessing your own performance. And helping to see what went wrong where. This one looks like a nice spot. We'll go to this shelter. Alright, going to set the parking brake. Take the throttle out of detent. And battery off. You could go through and undo all of the switchology if you like. But for now, let's go ahead and hop out of the jet. Fire up TAC view. Load the mission here real quick in TAC view, and then we'll flip things over in the stream. Okay, so for those unfamiliar, TACView is a free program that you can utilize that interfaces with DCS and a handful of other games. I want to say IL-2 Battle of X and Falcon BMS. Some of those are all kind of tied in with it. And it basically takes telemetry data from the game and presents it in a 3D environment that you can look around in, play it back and forth, manipulate, whole 9 yards. Some of that is subject to what the server will allow you to see. So in multiplayer servers that are PvP, they can do things like have a TAC view delay of 10 minutes or so, which will not record your telemetry data until 10 minutes has elapsed from that point. So if you leave the server early, you're not going to be able to see that last dogfight that you did right before bed. You'll have to actually wait the 10 minutes for that one if that's what the server has it set to. Still, other servers might have TAC view data exports turned off entirely, in which case you're not going to see anything but your own aircraft and nothing else, like none of your weapon launches, none of the other enemy that are in the zone, none of that. But for our purposes, and for most of the flights that we do with Pantheon Initiative, we tend to have TAC view as completely open, as we're not doing PvP, and when we are doing PvP, it's more essential for us to have that as an option, so that way instructors can sit down in the aftermath and talk about what things went, what happened where, what was good, what was bad, where pilots can try and improve a little bit and help them visually see what's going on there, mostly because we're not all sitting in the same room pointing as our wristwatches, which is an important pilot feature. So we talked about the aircraft and everything else while all of our friends were going out to do ambient things, just cruise around. There were some bombers that were coming in. We took off, cruised out, we met up with our tanker. Got into that observer position, which we can even see from the cockpit perspective, and it does show my head tracking. Kind of see what I was looking at as we got into position to tank. And we connected right there. We're at 5,800 pounds, 5,900 pounds rather. Connected the tanker, taking on our good sip. Managed to get it in one pull without falling off the tanker. 9,100 pounds, our center line was refueled. And we're ready to go fight. And this SA-2 was out there looking at us for a minute, and while I was talking to Jolly about the virtues of a boom tanker, it sent a harm downrange, hit by an ad. And I believe it was intercepted. Yep, the Panzer opened up on it with guns. So the SA-22 is like a souped up SA-19. And he killed it. Very rude. So I came back around again. The SA-2 fired at me. Now I dove down, and we'll talk about this during the seed setup especially, but the basic defensive maneuver that we're doing here to get away from it is to use the missile's guidance against it. the missile has to intercept me, so it can't fly to where I am, it has to fly to where I'm going. So there's two things that I'm doing. The first one is I'm trying to break contact with the SA-2 radar that's guiding these missiles, and I'm simultaneously forcing the missiles to fly a pattern that is going to send them into the terrain before it gets to my aircraft. So we get away from that. The harm comes in and knocks out the SA-2 track radar. That system is now off the threat list. Now that area is still kind of hot because we do have the Pantsir that's down here. We do have a Tor, which is an SA-15, and it's the improved version of the SA-15. There's also an SA-13 providing defense here. It's an infrared system. And some gun dishes and things like that. They got some gear and equipment that's down there, but the long range system we've now dealt with. Mostly to just stop it from making noise at me while we're doing everything else. Then we came out here to the dam, which we can see all the defenders in place here. There's an SA-8. And I think I identified him reasonably well. There's the cluster of tanks that we bombed. The SA-9 that we didn't see and shoot at, but there's the HQ-7 off to the right. Completely missed him. Came in and said, okay, that's great. Here, hold this bomb. And the HQ-7 said no. No, sir, I do not like your cluster munition. And at that point, we started getting shot at by the KS-19 battery. So long as we're not flying in a super straight, predictable line, we should be okay. Oh, he did shoot at me. Look at that. Fired 2 missiles. And you'll note that there was not a warning like we had with the SA-2 when the SA-2 shot at us. And that has everything to do with the guidance of the HQ-7. The HQ-7 uses a radar to designate a target. But it's almost like a track while scan type system, where he's looking at you, it'll give you the little chirp chirp that he's actually kind of tracking your aircraft, but it does not provide you a launch warning to tell you when he's fired, as it doesn't use a different radar band or frequency or whatever the RWR system interprets as this is a shooting radar that's looking at you now, to let you know that difference. So it only provides, the track warning at that point. You have to kind of do your guesswork. At this point, we were looking out at the MiG-29s, and I determined that they were flying away from me. And since they weren't committed to a fight because they're out there doing their part of the patrol for range day today before the makeshift Syrian red flag style war begins, we're going to come out here and drop more weapons. We've got our own tanks that are moving into the zone. I'll put a couple of cluster bombs downrange. These, as we get in here and zoom in a little more. Playing it forward kind of slow. Right now, the way TACView interprets the cluster bomb coming in, because you can see it's the cluster bomb unit, CB-105. It bursts, it puts bomblets downrange. It can't trek all the hockey pucks at once. The HQ-7 tried to intercept it, but was not quick enough. And we killed the SA-8. And we killed or heavily damaged the tank group. The big thing with guiding your weapons in there, as I understand that we had SpongeBob that is struggling to hit the targets a little bit. Trying to release weapons in good parameters is really the best thing there for it. Having a proper target designation, making sure that you've aligned your helmet well, and you've aligned the jet well. All of those things together play a part in the accuracy of the system. Dropping iron bombs, you've got pippers and everything that are more reflective on just the basic trigonometry and basic math of where your aircraft is, where the bomb's going to go, what his ballistic profile is that the computer's handling for you automatically in the background. So those can be a little easier to work with, and we'll see that next week as we're working with the iron bombs and making the best of the F-16's accuracy. But even your ripple settings might change that too, where if you're putting out more than one bomb at a time, and you have a distance set to it, like 300 or 400 feet or what have you, the ripple pattern for the F-16 is actually the middle. So instead of being 300 feet total, it's going to be your point of aim is at this point, and if you have it set to 300, you're going to drop one bomb 150 feet short and one bomb 150 feet long, so that it makes up that 300-foot pattern. And we'll talk about all those things next week as well, when we're focusing on iron bombs and the myriad of ways to use them. And kind of see what our tanks did here while we're cruising around, because we did come back in, do some gun work. BMP-3 was kind of ripping into this group a lot. Those leopards are just not answering him. Mr. HQ-7 once again tried to kill us, but he shifted targets as that cluster bomb came in. Kind of wanted to see this from this perspective, because we're using the tracerless rounds, so actually I didn't get to see bullets leave the area. It's not bad. Not bad at all. Threw out countermeasures over the top of the HQ-7. Left inverted for style points. He did not track us very quickly through there. Of course, he might also be... No, he's not out of missiles. He's got plenty of weapons here. Each one of these guys have got like 4 missiles on their rail. There's no way he shot 12 at me so far. And then we left, came back to Incirlik, parked, and now we're here. So some of the nicer features that TacView does allow you to use, as we're talking a little bit about that, because we're going to be using it a lot in our coming sorties and everything else, as our final recap of the day. You can see G-load on the aircraft, represented by these various lines. About those here in a second. I just want to get to a spot where I had actually put some pretty heavy G on the jet. Yeah, here's good. So this vertical line that's currently colored as dark red is the G-load line. It is almost pink when it's under 1 G loads. It goes more red all the way down to black as you get to 10 Gs. The line here that's got the X on the end of it, the teal colored line, is the center of my head tracking. So for example, if I went into the pilot's view right now, my head is looking backwards over the sight here as we're coming around. The green line indicates line of sight between myself and my current target. One of the things that we can see, let's pick the T-62 down here. Like out here, when they intercept my first harm, I've got a green line on me that tells me that I have clear line of sight between me and my other selected target, in this case the T-62. As I dive down, that becomes a red dotted line as I break line of sight. Very helpful if you're sitting there reviewing, like, okay, this SAM system shot at you, but you didn't actually break line of sight with the SAM system until this point or that point. The solid blue line is our flight path indicator. Mine is currently set to show a little bit of a tail and a little bit of a precursor for where I'm intending to fly. The dotted line is the true nose position of the aircraft relative to flight. With that, that's kind of it for today. Phase 1 has been a pretty good success for going over the basics of the aircraft. We included things like an introduction in history to the F-16 itself, from its early variants and its beginnings as a daytime fighter, as designed by Harry Hilliker, to its eventual transition to a multi-mission, multi-role fighter aircraft in production, and one that the Thunderbirds use today as their premier air demonstration aircraft. We did a cockpit walk-around covering the major systems of the jet and where they're located in the cockpit. We covered startup, helmet alignment, data link functions, which we can use in greater detail in future missions, as I can show you live when the AI aircraft are actually targeting different things, or potentially when I've got other players up there with me too, because you can build data link functions live inside the multiplayer server. So if you've got several F-16s that are working together, you can data link with one another just by building a network manually once you're in the game, as compared to one that is assigned automatically for 4 aircraft in a given flight. Talk about master modes on the aircraft. There are 3: air-to-air, air-to-ground, and navigation. We bounced through those a lot today. Basic navigation, the TACAN system, and waypoint navigation. We had our introduction to our target range. Most of what we're going to be doing is in that northern area of Turkey. Well, actually, it's a southern area of Turkey. It's the northern area of the Syria map, as that is our hypothetical war zone playground area that's in NATO territory. We did air refueling today. Pulled all of the gas that we needed, about 3,000 pounds worth off the tanker in one pull without being disconnected. And we had a little bit of fun blowing some things up, because I very firmly believe that if you're going to have a longer lecture type lesson thing there, it's nice to have something to look at and see some exciting things happen and blow up. Good for YouTube later too. This is the first of 10 phases. The first 6 phases are going to be covering basically weapon systems and methodology in their simple forms, making those work. And the last 4 phases are going to be fixated on seeing those systems employed in a higher threat type environment, suitable for a limited number of aircraft. I really don't want to put something up in here that really kind of needs dozens of aircraft to come up there and attack, as our part in that would be very small. But we'll make it work. Good time. See the normal week-to-week activities there. This was Saturday, so as Pilum teaches DCS, our next stream is on Tuesday. Probably going to be more classic games oriented. Might even have some extra streams here in just a little bit as we dip into some gray zone. Friday we have Arma 3. We're playing Antistasi, which is an interesting mix of our modern mod list, you know, with modern, like, classic type equipment, bullets and everything else, versus the Galactic Empire. And so far we've been holding our own largely there, which has been working out rather well. With that, folks, always ask for consent. Try to communicate as best you can with your partners. Try to be genuinely decent human beings. And I will catch up with you next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Have a fantastic day.